And I think we're good to go. So we're now recording. So our topics for today's workshop and our agenda here, we're doing our welcome, and then we will talk about the AIS Volunteers and Ambassadors Program with Adam Dahl. We'll talk about improving the efficiency of watercraft inspections through coordination and cooperation with Dr. A.B. Kinsley. And then we'll do a round robin collaboration update on multi-county collaborations. So share things that you have collaborated with others on. And then we'll take a break, and then the remaining of the meeting we'll talk about general public engagement efforts. We've got a few presenters that we'll talk about some stuff today, and we welcome anyone else on the call to also give their thoughts. So that's what we've got on the docket here today. And I think I will just kick it on over to Adam if you're ready to chat about AIS Volunteers and Ambassadors Program.
Sure, thank you, Tina. We are early. I don't have a ton to run over with this. Let me just pull up PowerPoint.
Oh, and I can stop presenting.
I will start. All right, are you able to see my screen okay, Tina?
Yep.
Great. So hi, everybody. I'm Adam Dahl. I coordinate the Watercraft Inspection Program, and many of you also have inspection programs here as well. I'm just going to spend a little bit of time today talking about the AIS volunteer program that we have. This is probably a refresher for a lot of you, and also just a reminder that it is a program that's still out there. The volunteer program has seen some declining participation over the years. It was originally a way for Lake Association members or other interested people to go out and do education activities at the Access. Once we saw the expansion and the growth of the Watercraft Inspection Program via delegation agreements and all sorts of local units of government starting their own programs, those programs started to fill or replace some volunteer programs that were out there. The main difference between being a volunteer and being an authorized inspector is that authorized inspectors have legal authority to do inspections. So they're physically doing inspections. Boaters are required to comply with those inspections. They receive training, supervision, things of that nature. The caveat there is only local units of government can have authorized inspection programs, and that's in statute. So if there are lakes or other areas that have motivated individuals that want to do some education at accesses, this program is still there. It's still able to be used by really anybody that wants to go through the training and then follow the procedures that we have. The key piece to just mention and think about when you're talking about the difference between ambassadors and volunteers in one category and authorized inspectors in the other. Authorized inspectors physically do watercraft inspections. It used to be really clean and simple back when no inspectors had legal authority to do inspections, and since 2012, and that legal distinction is there, it muddies the water a little bit about the roles of these two groups. AIS ambassadors or AIS volunteers aren't watercraft inspectors. They are educators. They can go out to the Access and educate about invasive species. They can certainly talk about watercraft inspection and provide tips and tricks to boaters that are at the Access to do their own inspection. But what they aren't supposed to be doing is really walking up and and identifying who they are, and then doing an inspection for that boater. That's what authorized inspectors are for. So it's kind of a fine line, but we really want to make that distinction clear to anybody that wants to be an ambassador or a volunteer. It's not the same as an inspector in more ways than just the legal authority aspect. If the boater wants to help out or have you help out, that's just fine. But always make sure that you're representing yourself accordingly. One of the big things we push with watercraft inspection is consistency, and all of these different programs that are out there vary in sizes from 1 or 2 inspectors to 1 or 2 accesses up to the 130 inspector range with Three Rivers Park District and numerous lakes and many countywide programs. So there's this big difference, but under that authorized inspection process, any inspector is really the same. They're following the same protocols and procedures. And with volunteers and ambassadors, we just want to make it clear to the boater really on who these different groups are and what they're required to do. So if an ambassador is out talking to somebody and they don't want to talk with them, that's perfectly okay. And that's kind of a distinction that's there. We just to look at this slide here and talk a little bit about ambassadors and volunteers and why the extra complexity there in the terms. Functionally, they're both basically the same thing. We had to create a distinction for ambassadors and volunteers really from a liability perspective. So ambassadors are people that are hired by local units of government to go out and do education at DNR accesses or other accesses, but they're not going through the watercraft inspection program. They don't have a delegation agreement. So it's sort of that separate area. The reason that I talk about liability with AIS volunteers, DNR covers the liability of all DNR volunteers that are out there. So when a person is hired by another government unit, we want to make sure that they're covered by all of their insurance and liabilities and everything like that. Another important distinction when we talk about these two programs is we're looking at really state administered accesses is the main area here. We're happy to train anybody that wants to go out there, but like I can use Ramsey County as an example, who has all of the accesses are administered by Ramsey County. They can send people out to their own accesses, and that's not really under the authority or the purview of the Minnesota DNR. So when we talk about ambassadors, if you have paid people that want to go volunteer, our main thing is to make sure that they're doing that. They're following a set of protocols at state administered accesses. If they're going to other accesses, we're happy to provide training and support to those staff as well, but that's the distinction there. Some other key pieces to think about as far as being an AIS volunteer in an area that we're internally working to try and improve is really the communication between DNR watercraft inspection supervisors and the volunteers out in the field. They do need to take a training and pass a background check every single year. And sometimes that doesn't happen. We might hear of people that are out that are volunteering that took the training a few years ago and have just continued to go out to the access. It's really important for volunteers to follow the procedures we have. Again, sort of back to that liability aspect. If something were to happen to them and they think that they're a DNR volunteer, but they haven't done that process, we could be running into some challenges there if they're not actually a DNR volunteer, even if they think they are. So a key thing for anybody that wants to be a volunteer, you have to do a background check. This slide is a little outdated, but we have been doing in-person trainings and then online trainings once every few years. I see there's a typo there too. The last few years with COVID, it's just been online. So it's easier for new people to go out and be volunteers. But again, they lose that connection with us where we're talking to them face to face and telling them about all the different criteria to be a volunteer. We're happy to have volunteers. We just want good volunteers that are willing to let us know where they're going, let us know how many hours they volunteered. We track all of those things and provide it to the DNR's volunteer program as a whole. There's a ton of different volunteers out there. So if you want to be a volunteer, we're happy to have you. We just want to make sure that you're following the right protocols. Might have opened I have multiple PowerPoints open. Hold on. Here we go. As far as the roles, like I said, this is just the slide I skipped ahead of a little bit, but ambassadors and volunteers do the same thing. They're educating about aquatic invasive species. They can certainly teach watercraft inspection techniques. If they're comfortable with the laws, they can certainly relay those things. And they can also report violations to conservation officers, just like our watercraft inspectors do, just like any member of the public does. You know, if a volunteer sees a boat leaving or arriving with vegetation or covered in mussels, certainly please report that to us. And again, just that reminder that I mentioned, the volunteer program is voluntary. That's the main difference between the two, between being a volunteer or an authorized inspector. Lastly, I'll just point out the website here. So it's there. We do have an online training. It's available still through this link. That's how we will be proceeding in 2022. As far as changes and tweaks, we would like to, like I said, improve the communication between DNR staff and AIS volunteers. We have, those of you that have watercraft inspection programs know that we've moved over to an Accord LMS online training system for staff, and probably for 2023, now that we have a full-time person in place as a training coordinator, they will be, another task for them will be to help work on the volunteer aspect and the volunteer side of things. And we'd like to move or migrate this training into Accord LMS, where it's just more user-friendly. We can provide information, we can provide the forms that are needed. We can provide some quizzes and checks for them to work through and just demonstrate their knowledge. There isn't a test or anything for the volunteer program, but we could certainly add quizzes and things of that nature. Tina, that is everything I have. I'm happy to answer questions about these or comments.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. We do have time for some questions if you have them. I know it can, like Adam said, it can kind of be confusing between the three different things. So we're happy to clarify anything at this time.
All right, and I'll end if there are no questions. Just a reminder: anybody can always reach out to me as the coordinator to either get ready for the volunteer program, or if you have questions about it. Or we do have our 4 watercraft inspection supervisors throughout the region. They're the main point of contact for the volunteers. So if you're in Region 1, that's Mike Belinsky. Carrie Hall is in Region 2. Christine Hakala-Coons is in Region 3, and Travis Kinsel is in Region 4.
All righty.
Thank you, Tina.
Thanks, Adam. And I put Adam's email in the chat too. So, oh, we do have one question for you, Adam. If a county is working with volunteers, does the DNR pay for the background check, or does the county and relay that information to the DNR?
The background check is done through our HR. There's never been a fee associated with that background check. So, and then that process. So when they fill out the forms, when a volunteer fills out all the forms, that goes to the regional inspection supervisor. They'll send those forms to our human resources, and then our HR will let us know whether or not people have passed or not. And then in turn, our supervisor will notify each person that they've passed and they're good to go and start volunteer activities. Looks like Russ has a question too.
Yeah, Russ.
So if I have a lake that has no DNR administered accesses, they're all either county or township. If I wanted to have a ambassador or volunteer at those, would they need to go through all of the same requirements, or can I just kind of minimize some of those? I guess I'd still like to have them at least go through the training for sure. And then probably, I guess I can see the benefit of having a background check. I don't think that's been a hang up, but
Yeah,
the rest is really needed.
our area of authority, I guess, is around state administered accesses. So if you've got county accesses, you're sending people out that aren't part of the inspection program, where again, that brings the DNR back in. We're sort of outside of that area. We can do the background check. We're happy to train them, even if they don't do the background check. The training's just online. It's a very condensed version of watercraft inspection training. It doesn't cover nearly all of the topics. Okay, thank you, Carrie. I was just going to add that, yeah, volunteers and ambassadors, another distinction between the two. They don't have access to our watercraft inspection survey. They're not doing watercraft inspections, so they're not collecting data for us at the access the same as inspectors do.
All right. Any other questions on the volunteer program? Cool beans. Well, we will move on to our next topic here then. We've got Dr. Amy Kinsley from the University of Minnesota to just give a brief overview of her research project, improving the efficiency of watercraft inspections through coordination and collaboration. So, or coordination and cooperation.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Tina. Let's see, I'm trying to share my screen.
Yep, we're seeing the first slide. Yep.
Okay, great. So thank you for the invitation to share a brief update on the project today. This project was funded last year through MACERC, and as Tina mentioned, I'm Amy Kinsley. I'm an assistant professor in the College of Vet Med, and I'm also a MACERC research fellow. And what I'll present to you today is a subset of the project that was funded through MACERC, titled Increasing the Efficiency of Watercraft Inspections Through County Level Collaborations. And the overall work includes multiple aims at understanding how to more effectively manage watercraft inspections. And today I'm just going to share with you a quick bit on one of those aims. And I really hope that this work captures your interest and also your engagement. So diving right in, as you know, the management of AIS in Minnesota largely takes place at the state and also the local level. At the state level, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources Invasive Species Program works to prevent the introductions of new invasive species at the state and also prevents the spread of invasive species already in Minnesota. And they work to reduce the impacts caused by these invasive species. And then at the local level, right, the counties or you guys or other local government units are working to limit the spread of AIS within the county, and that's supported by the AIS Prevention Aid that disperses the $10 million amongst the counties based on the watercraft trailer launches in parking spaces. And so this approach has been really beneficial in supporting the local level conservation efforts, which have been shown to foster innovation, create local opportunities. It has the potential to harvest local level knowledge of natural resources and bring those to the table to increase efficiency and efficacy. It brings the government closer to the citizens, makes space for local social cultural factors, which are really important in success of these types of programs, and creates opportunities for collaboration. But it can also lead to variability that leads to major losses in efficiency. And because of the large number of lakes that exist within the state and the large number of boats that move across the landscape, it can be really challenging to design cost-effective watercraft inspection programs. And these points brought us, and along with conversations with county managers, brought us to want to answer the question or want to aim, sorry, go back there, want to identify how counties can work together to increase the number of risky boats inspected in watercraft inspection programs and how to fairly share costs when working in a collaborative group. And so to do this, we use the Minnesota Boater Movement Networks, and I'll describe those further in the next slide. And we identified metrics that we can use to analyze the networks based on attributes that we've identified through successful collaborations. And we've identified and implemented a method to fairly share costs when working in collaborative groups. And I'll share an overview of those preliminary results with you guys today. So the Minnesota Boater Movement Network was constructed using data collected from the watercraft inspection data submitted from 2014 to 2017. And that included data on over 9,000 lakes in 87 counties, and also included estimates for lakes that were not inspected, and also accounted for the unequal effort at different inspection stations. And more information on the details of the network and how it was constructed can be found in the paper below. And if anybody needs help accessing that, feel free to reach out to me. We also used the Minnesota DNR's infested waters list for 4 species of interest, and that included zebra mussels, Eurasian water milfoil, starry stonewort, and spiny water flea. And then I'll use the term risky boats throughout the presentation. So I just want to break that down a little bit here now and be really explicit about what a risky boat is. And so a risky boat is any boat that moves from an infested water body to an uninfested water body. So in this study, since we're considering multiple species of interest, it means that if a water body I here is infested with zebra mussels only, and water body J here is infested with Eurasian water milfoil only, that we would consider boats that move from both I to J and also J to I as risky boat movements. And then we identified and quantified those risky boat movements that move between counties, and we ranked those relationships. So for example, here I have some toy examples, and we can see here that we have County A and County B, and that we can rank those by the top 3 sources of risky boats. So here, County A's top 3 sources are B, C, and D, and County B's top 3 sources are A, C, and J. And we turn to this concept of network reciprocity, which has been shown as a critical factor in explaining successful collaborations, to generate these networks based on these ranks. So we can see here, if we considered only the top senders, that there's a reciprocal relationship that exists in this county network of County A and B, which could be a potential opportunity for a collaboration. And when we visualize this as a network and we designate these counties as nodes, or these circles that we're showing here, and the lines that connect them as that mutual out-of-county boat movement. So we can expand on this and reiterate this point with a bit more complexity. So here I'm adding a couple of more counties. So I'm adding C and D and their top 3 rankings. And we can see here that a reciprocal relationship exists between A and B, and then also now B and D and C and D. And so I'll give you a moment to take a look at this and think about if we were to create a network like we had before with those circles and those counties as the nodes and those risky boat movements as relationships, what that might look like. And I've kind of colored the boxes here to give you some tips on that. And so you might have constructed something in your mind that looked like this. So this would be an example of what we're calling these reciprocal relationships, or these collaboration networks. And we can see here that we see that relationship showing up between A and B, and that we had described before in the first network. But now we've also added that D to B, and now that C to D. And so visualizing the network as a graph like this can not only help us understand who's connected to whom, but also can tell us about those connections as a whole, because we can gain information about the structure of those networks. And I'll elaborate on that a little bit further. But I progressively repeated this process for all of the counties in the states, looking at those top senders. And I went through and continued to expand the ranking until I saw some patterns that I'll share with you here briefly. So when I just looked at the top senders for each county, looking at those risky boat movements, I saw that there were 4 groups that were formed. And so those 4 groups were formed between Carver and Hennepin, Ramsey and Washington, Cass and Crow Wing, and St. Louis and Lake. And so of course, when we're just looking at those top connections, that group size is 2. And so the average group size of all 4 of these would also be 2. But that changes as we expand this out, right? So I took that from those top one connections, right? So that's that top county that sends risky boats to, let's say, your county. I did that and I expanded it out. So now I'm looking at the top 2, the top 3, the top 4, the top 5. And what I ended up seeing was when I got to the top 6, that I ended up with one large collaboration network of 20 counties, and that's not really functional, right? You can imagine that trying to collaborate with 19 other folks, all with different interests and perspectives, can get really challenging. So that brings to rise the question of what's the ideal group size for collaboration. I think that's still a hot point debated currently, but in sociological studies, there's been kind of this repeat finding that the ideal group size lies somewhere between 4 and 8, and maybe it's somewhere around 5, and that the ideal group size, if you go beyond that, that there's a loss in productivity and in cohesion as well. And so kind of taking inspiration from those findings of other studies, I've moved forward here with what potential collaborations might look like if we use that as the group size. So here I'm showing the collaboration networks. And you can see that collaboration A consists of 6 counties. So there's Aiken, Mille Lacs, Crow Wing, Cass, Beltrami, and Itasca. Collaboration B has 4 counties. There's Pope, Otter Tail, Douglas, and Todd. Collaboration C is made up of St. Louis and Lake counties. Collaboration D has 6. We have Carver, Wright, Hennepin, Anoka, Ramsey, and Washington. And an interesting thing to note that I mentioned previously is that these networks take on shapes based on those reciprocal relationships that highlight what I think is the importance of certain counties. So for example, if we look at collaboration A and D, they're both made up of 6 counties, but they take on entirely different shapes. And that's because of the way these reciprocal relationships are formed with other counties. And so for instance, here in collaboration A, we can see that Crow Wing County is connected to 3 other counties, right? It's connected to Aiken, Mille Lacs, and Cass. And so is Cass. Cass also is connected to Crow Wing, Beltrami, and Itasca. And that those counties might be more important to have as core members of the collaboration, or it could be that those could be key counties to include in branching between different collaborative groups. But just understanding that that structure can play a role in the efficiency and who's participating, I think is a really interesting idea and something we can discuss further. And then again, if we look at that same point within collaboration D, we can see that Hennepin County is connected to Anoka, Carver, and Wright, where the remainder of them are only connected to 1 or 2 other counties. And then I'm showing that here on the map on the right. And so you can imagine how those, again, that are more highly connected might be more successful in terms of how this collaboration functions and whether they're participating or not, and to what degree. And so within this body of work, we also wanted to know how counties could fairly share costs if they were to work within a collaborative group. Because as I mentioned previously, some folks within the collaboration might be more integral to the success of it, or that might also mean that they're getting more of a benefit out of that collaborative relationship. And so to answer this question, we turn to something called the Shapley values, and that's a concept that's rooted in something called game theory. And what that does is it studies how to distribute costs or gains to actors that work within a coalition. And so there's a variety of examples where this has been used, and I'll talk about that a little bit further. And we don't need to get into the specifics of the math here, but I just wanted to show you how we approach this, and that we looked at the number of counties within the coalition. We looked at all the different configurations of how that network could be structured. And then we also considered the payoff of the coalition would be the number of risky votes that were inspected based on those members of the collaboration. And so, as I said, this is rooted in something called game theory, which is the study of math models that strategically look at the interactions amongst decision makers. And this falls under the umbrella of cooperative games. And so that can predict which coalitions form, how payoffs can be split, or on the other side of that, how costs could be shared as well, right? Or how they could be, how people could pay into something like this. And so some other real world examples are in marketing. And so marketing firms use this type of approach to determine what type of marketing channels attract the most customers, how to invest in those channels in the future. And they've also been used to look at different items to add to a restaurant menu based on different ingredients for different entrees. They've also looked at transportation organization and folks that share similar supply chains, which, as we all know today, is critically important, right? So when we implemented these Shapley values for those collaboration networks, I'm showing this as a pie chart. And I've noted here that these are preliminary outputs, because I think there's more discussion that needs to go on around this conversation. And we need to validate some of these calculations, but I just wanted to share this as a concept and show how the costs could be shared amongst counties that do participate in that collaboration, accounting for who might be getting more gains out of participating within that relationship. And so we see here that the largest potential benefit would belong to Crow Wing County and Collaboration A, and Douglas and B, and Hennepin and C, and then this kind of strange finding of this equal split between St. Louis County and Lake County, which we still need to, as I said, validate. But I think that's really interesting that this also matches up really well with what we saw with those folks participating within, or the way they're connected within the collaboration networks, and that we're seeing kind of these repeat patterns here. So our next steps are to investigate further these concepts of sharing resources. There's some more approaches within game theory that might be more interesting in diving into dynamics and things like that. We want to investigate the boat traffic networks. We want to see how those have changed over the years, update that with new information or new data that we've acquired. We want to do a sensitivity analysis and look at boater types. And I think most importantly for me presenting this work to you today is that we want to hear from AIS county managers, right? We want to do a survey to understand how watercraft inspection objectives and strategies are developed. We want to understand needs, interests, and experience with developing collaborations, which I know we'll start to unpack here today. And we also want to modify the interactive dashboard AIS Explorer. And so I just have a very small kind of screenshot of that for the watercraft inspection tab here. So with that, I want to thank Tina and Adam for the invitation to present here and for the input that they've given my project team on our work that we've done here. I also want to invite you to email me if you're interested or if you have any further questions about this, and my email address is here, and you can also look me up on the UMN website. And I want to thank my project team for their engagement. This was a multidisciplinary group, and each of them were really key in the success of the project overall. And so Robert Haight is a collaborator that I work with extensively on this, along with Denise Yemshinoff, our postdoc, Alex Badges, the folks from AIS Explorer, or from Epi Interactive, who've helped us create the AIS Explorer, Nick Phelps, who's the director of MACERC, and Zoe Cow, who's a PhD student who is working on this, the network creations. And so with that, I just want to see if there's any questions. I know that was a quick run through and I've gone over potentially a bit, but I want to thank you all for your attention.
Thanks, Amy. We do have time for questions. We have a flexible agenda today.
Okay,
so
great.
Our next topic is multi-organization collaboration. So this fits right in.
Perfect. Yeah, I know I dumped a lot of concepts on you guys today. So if you want me to review anything or chat further, I'd be happy to.
Hello, Tina. I have a question. This is Doug.
Yeah, Doug.
Good morning. Amy, nice presentation.
Thank you.
Question for you. Based on the sensitivity analysis that you're going to be doing, will that frame and provide some insights on which type of watercraft overall possess the greatest risk for movement between
Yes.
water bodies in the state?
So I don't know if we're quite going to get to which watercraft is contributing the most to risk. I think would we break it out, we want to look at how each watercraft is contributing to the overall structure of the network. And I think that can get us to maybe generate some other ideas surrounding that. But I think we'd have to think very carefully about what that means in terms of risk and how we might be able to calculate that. But I do think it'll give us some results that might kind of hint around that, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And there's a question in the chat. Will data be updated to include more recent inspection stats?
Yeah, so that's one of our kind of more ambitious goals, I think, on this work is to update those networks. And so it's quite a bit of data and there's a lot that goes into it, but it's something that's on our list of things to accomplish within the next year. So that's the goal. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And I think that's another note is that it's really important that watercraft inspectors be collecting consistent and accurate data because it's informing a lot of this research. So I know Adam has been hosting a handful of watercraft inspection meetings with those that do have delegation agreements on that topic. But just another note that that data is really important and it's used by a lot of people. Any other questions for Amy? All right.
Great, thank you. As I mentioned before, if you guys have any questions or thoughts regarding this that come up later, feel free to email me. You could do that through the email I provided, or again, you can look me up on the U. My information's available there. So
yep.
Please feel free to reach out.
I put your email in the chat as well, so people can just copy paste that as needed.
Okay, thank you all.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. All righty. So now we're on to the group participation section of this workshop for the next about 20-25 minutes or so to talk about multi-organization collaboration. We've got a few examples that are ready to be shared. So Holly, if you're on and ready to share your video, we can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna share my screen if I can figure out. Let's see here. But that's sharing you. Can you see my presentation?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, everyone. Hi, my name's Holly. I work with Worcester County. And so this particular public service announcement wasn't even planned, actually, which it just kind of came out of the blue. I was awarded a community-based social marketing grant. And because of the way, things were progressing with the pandemic, I had to kind of think quickly on my feet as far as doing some additional training opportunities. And so I started to kind of throw around some ideas of what potentially could pop up that would be a good substitute instead of doing in-person meetings. And I thought, what better way than a video? And I had done some research ahead of time too. I was looking for any kind of materials that were related to shoreline owners and drying the 21-day dry rule, essentially drying their docks, lifts, and other water associated equipment for at least 21 days before moving. And I couldn't really find a whole lot of materials. So it kind of was a no-brainer to me that this was a great thing to move forward and to essentially do. That way we could address some of those gaps of the resources that we don't have available. So basically it's a public service announcement, and I partnered with Wildlife Forever to produce the video. And what I did was I just sent out a ton of emails. I think I sent out an email to pretty much every AIS coordinator, administrator within for all the different counties and soil and water districts, and then waited for a response. And there was quite a bit of positive responses. Again, this was kind of last minute. I think I did it around April and May. And I had 19 LGUs in total that partnered with this. So it was a pretty good response, and it was kind of last minute, but the whole intent of this was to be used statewide. And essentially it's a video for shoreline owners, again, about the 21-day dry rule. And it talks about best management practices and essentially what they should do as far as when they move their equipment, drying, cleaning. And it's a good resource that we didn't have available. And I'm hoping that it can kind of catch on and just be used statewide. You can find it either on the Worcester County's AIS Education and Outreach page, or it's on YouTube. If you just type in shoreline owner training AIS prevention, it should pop up. Some things, I guess, from a standpoint as positives and negatives from this. Positives, it was great because now we have, additional resources on this topic that weren't out there. It's pretty easy to share. It's only about a 3.5-minute video. I won't share it today, but I definitely encourage you to take a look at it, and please feel free to use it and share it. So even if, there's like I presented at a lot of lake association meetings, so it's something really easy to share at that meeting and doesn't require a huge time commitment. So that's just an example of why, the time frame too was where it was at. What I wish we would have done differently, we were kind of, had time constraints because of the grant, but if I would have been able to ask ahead of time a little bit more about commitments ahead of time as far as who would want to partner, especially before budgets are kind of set with each LGU, I think that would have made a huge difference as far as who would partner, because a lot of the responses I received was their budgets were set and they already had money that was set aside for other activities, so they couldn't contribute this year. And then the other thing too is I didn't really have enough time towards the end. Maybe, if I had a couple more weeks to have those that partnered actually review the video a little bit more and provide more feedback, I think that would have helped too. But again, we are kind of on time constraints with the grant. But overall, I think it was a really good project. I think the biggest thing I learned from this is that partnerships are super, super important, and it makes a huge difference. The video costs about $15,000, and that might be kind of a big commitment for one LGU, but multiple, it's not quite as bad. And then we create some type of resource that we can use statewide. So I'm really happy with this. It was something that wasn't planned, but turned out to be a really good resource. And I hope everyone gets to take a look at the video and then also share it. Please do share it. You don't need my permission. I want this to be shared as much as possible. So with that, that's kind of the end of my presentation. And I'm open for questions too.
Thanks, Holly. There's one question that I can answer. What grant did you receive? And it was a grant from the DNR for behavior change. It was a one-time grant program that was offered in 2020 and just wrapped up last month. So I'm working on all of those final reports and getting those shared eventually. Any other questions for Holly?
Tina, I have another question.
Yeah, Doug.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Holly, for doing the video. I'm wondering how you are evaluating whether or not it resulted in behavior change.
Yeah, that's a good question. Part of the behavior change was, it was kind of like an additional training for shoreline owners. So that was something that I'm hoping to continue with the county. Essentially, everyone got a yard sign and it had the 21-day dry rule. And that was kind of the first step. And then there was another level of commitment as far as the video and like actually attending a training and using the video. And then seeing if from there, if they could move forward. I had post-participant surveys. As far as the video directly causing behavior change, I don't have a good measurement idea, I guess, for that. We've used surveys, but I think that would be a really good thing to kind of measure. Maybe even like views would be a way to kind of do some measurement. I think that'd be an easy, quick way of measuring that for sure.
Yeah, it has like 430 views already. I think when I shared it, shared it like a month or so ago, and it had like 170 views. So it's been shared and viewed widely so far, which is really awesome. And it's just so great that a small number of local governments could come together and then create a resource that's available statewide. So great work, Holly.
Thank you.
Certainly without exposure, there can't be behavior change. So there has to be exposure. So that's a good first step. But I'm thinking there's got to be a way in which to see if there's an uptick in the usage of the 21-day rule. Thanks.
Maybe a survey later. All right. I know there's probably a handful of partners on this call right now that funded this. Any thoughts from those partners?
Hi, yeah, this is Dana from Cass County, and I think the thing that I've used most is just sharing the handout a lot. I bring it to all my events. We were able to change it to put my name and info in so they can contact me, which has been helpful. But I think I need to work on sharing the YouTube video more too, because I think it's really good. But it's been nice because people can just throw it in as a page in their newsletters too. So that handout's been great. We'd do it again. I saved $500 for my budget this year in case anybody asks for a similar project.
Awesome.
Oh,
Cool.
that's some good planning there. I like that. Cool, cool, cool. Well, thank you, Holly. And I did post the link of the video in the chat, and maybe I'll play it during our break.
That sounds good. That would be perfect.
Awesome. All right, Spencer, are you there? Would you like to talk about your bait bag collaboration?
Sure. I could, let me turn on my screen here. Can you hear me? Okay,
Yep.
everyone? Okay.
Now we can see you.
I do have my PowerPoint from last year that I could share if people, and I could just skim through it. We basically, and how do I share my screen here? I haven't used Teams in a while. Share contents. Okay. What are we seeing here? Are we seeing this?
Yep, we're seeing the full PowerPoint.
Okay, great.
Setup. There we go.
So this is a recap of what we did last year, essentially. But the idea is getting bait bags into the hands of anglers so that they can do the proper thing to either dispose of their minnows in the trash, save them without transporting lake water, or anything to prevent them from throwing them into the lake or transporting lake water as they move from access to access. So it's really sort of based on DNR's community-based social marketing, which indicates that live bait handling and disposal are a major issue for AIS prevention. And to give some context, the drain plug compliance across the state is excellent. It's in the high 95 percentile. And then from Adam Dahl's summary of watercraft inspection programs last year, total overall compliance with all AIS laws is extremely good. It's in the very high 90%. But bait handling is still lagging because it's kind of complicated and it's just difficult to actually do. So that means it's an easy opportunity for improvement. So there's two basic problems. The first problem is disposing of unwanted bait. Unused or unwanted minnows, bait, night crawlers, leeches must be disposed of in the trash, not thrown into the lake or on the ground. However, there are often no disposal areas at public water accesses for various reasons. This is also an area of improvement that we can work on. And then the second problem is saving of the bait. So minnows used for bait must be kept alive, and they have quite demanding oxygen and temperature requirements for that. So land water from bait shops, convenience stores, a home, for instance, that's lawful to transport on public roads. That's good for saving bait. Lake water and water from the waters of the state is not lawful to transport on public roads. So if an angler brings extra water to leave on land, they can save their minnows for another outing. However, there's often no land water available at public water access sites, wells and things like that. So that's another area that I'd be curious or interested in trying to address is water provisions. Anyway, a solution to sort of these two interlocking issues we thought were bait bags. We worked with Cook County. We looked at their SWCD. They had some bags designed, a lot of text. It's a great idea. Wait, don't dump your bait. Really outlining what the expectations and laws are, so people are aware of how to handle their live minnows and lake water. So we worked with Wildlife Forever and Tina and a design committee last January, and came up with this design that you see here. And we had a meeting just yesterday where I can happily say that we may be broadening this from Minnesota, genericizing it, because we have partners in the state of Ohio that are interested in these bags now. So it's getting national recognition. In Ohio, they're specifically concerned about Asian carp coming up from the Mississippi River and entering the Great Lakes via Lake Erie and the Chicago Interlake Canal, or whatever, the Illinois River. Because a small carp, silver carp and a minnow can look very similar when they're only 2 inches long, right? So This is really expanding. But anyway, the bags are 10 by 24. They're 2 mils thick, although we're looking this year to make them a little thicker, 3 mils thick. And they come in cases of 1,000. However, we're also looking at working with Wildlife Forever to get them on. These are in boxes, but we're looking at doing them in bags as well. Or not bags, rolls. Because some of the larger bait shops use rollers. They have that infrastructure set up. So the distribution at the bait retailers, like bringing them straight to the retailers, is the way that we're pursuing this program. So I visited 24 bait shops in the county last summer and dropped these off. Gave them all a nice little sign that explains how they work. But basically, anglers using live bait arrive at the access with the knowledge and the means to handle bait properly because they were educated at the bait shop. They have the extra water with them, and the bait dealers receive positive publicity for being proactive in the stewardship of the resource. So we educate the public and we give them the tools to do the right thing at the point of use, which is the public water access. Partnerships. So this map is from last year, so we probably will have more partners. But this was what we had in the initial order of February 2021. 141,000 bags were ordered across the state by 14 counties, 2 SWCDs, and 1 coalition of lake associations. And new partners can join at the bulk rate. So you can see here, this map is kind of interesting. It's mostly the northern tier of Minnesota counties, the northern half. There's the metro involvement, but I'd like to see this whole state illuminated at some point. Project evaluation. So we need to evaluate this to determine impact. We're running it in concurrence with the North St. Louis County SWCD bait awareness project that they're working with Tina on that, and they're going to use techniques from CBSM to evaluate the effectiveness of the project. More to come. And actually, I'm actually typing up a questionnaire for bait dealers today. I'll be going out and visiting the ones I visited last year, asking them questions. And the questions that I really are focusing on are the design of the bag, positive, negative, neutral. What would you change based on what you saw? If they want rolls or boxes, ask them if they're providing a bag of extra water, and then if they're not, would they be willing to provide a bag of extra water? And then how many additional bags they'd like, because we'll be probably doing an order here to get these ready for May. So those are kind of the next steps for that. So it's a really cool project.
Yes, a really awesome collaborative work there, Spencer. Since you're going out to bait shops, I would also recommend asking them what makes it easy for them to distribute the bags or what makes it difficult for them to distribute the bags, because that gets at kind of the barriers and motivators for their engagement, which is a key
because they
part.
have it's sort of this opposite side of the coin. Like the lake user at the public water access has issues with this, but also the logistics of being a distributor. How do you actually do it? What barriers can we dismantle to make it easier for you and your staff to actually do this project, right? It's funny how this is all connected.
Yeah. Interesting. It's like invasive species don't mind jurisdictional boundaries.
Yeah. So the last slide is my contact information. If you're interested in joining this project and feedback, you can reach out to me. Dane Honecker at Wildlife Forever is the vendor, and they have a new staff person there, Elliot, who is going to really be taking point in this project as well. I don't have his contact info here. And then project evaluation, I refer all you guys to Tina. So that's my presentation.
Thanks, Spencer.
Yeah.
Any questions for Spencer? All right. Well, if you do, his email is in the chat. If you want to get involved in the bait bag project, you're invited to. And so now we have a little bit of time. Let's see here. Share.
Oh, Tina, just check out. Doug has a good comment in the chat about small, big head, and silver carp look like gizzard shad to an average person. I certainly wouldn't know the difference if I didn't have an ID card next to me.
Thanks for sharing that, Doug. Yeah, there's a good question in the chat there for you, Spencer. What rate of participation do you find bait shops are willing to participate?
Oh, sure. When I drove around, of the 24 I stopped at, I really only had to sell about 2 shops, to pitch them. They were not, maybe the word isn't skeptical, but they just had some questions on the logistics and how well it would work. But when I told them that the bags were free, that there was no cost to them, that also removed a barrier of commitment.
Mm-hmm.
That this was a gratis thing. So very positive feedback from the shops.
And are those all locally owned bait shops, or are they larger kind of corporate?
Yes. They were all basically family owned or operated franchises. One of them was like a Hardware Hank or like a Super Value tied in, but those are locally owned and operated as well. A few co-ops, like farmers co-ops, have convenience stores, so I work with them, but those are also locally administered. So we don't really have any corporate stores here in Otter Tail County aside from Fleet Farm.
Yeah, from what I've heard, working with locally owned independent bait shops is an easy foot in the door for working with bait shops. It's more challenging to work with larger organizations.
Oh, for sure.
And then Dana put in the chat, 100% of the bait shops at least use the bags for bait in Cass County out of the 15 approached. I don't think any of them actually offered a bag of water in the bag, which was the hope. So yeah, there's definitely 2 uses to those bags. So that worked out well, but could be promoted more. All righty, let's see here. So we're at about 11, but I want to see if other organizations have some collaboration examples that they would like to share, public service announcements or other public engagement efforts that you've collaborated with one or more organizations kind of outside of your jurisdiction. So, but I see, Doug, you have a quick question here.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having trouble with Teams like normal, and I can't see the screen. I couldn't see Spencer's presentation. Spencer, what was the cost per bag?
20 cents.
20 cents? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Carl, I see you popped on there.
Yeah, I was just going to jump on, and I thank the folks here that have helped us with the sponsorship of the Lenders Angling Buzz television program. We've been doing that for 5 years now. They've reduced the rate again this year for us to have a commercial on the Lenders Angling Buzz TV show. And we've updated the message. It's just a simple message, kind of informed with the work that you've done with community-based social marketing, that just reinforces the idea that a majority of boaters do follow AIS prevention practices. We are looking for a few other partners. I'm looking at my spreadsheet here. 3 or 4 other counties I'm still waiting to hear from. I hope to keep this going as the company's been great to work with. So if any counties out there who haven't received an email from me because you haven't participated in the past, or if you have any interest in participating, we share the cost based on the amount of aid counties receive. So counties that receive, in that, $50,000 and less contribute $400, up to, the counties like Becker that are receiving over 200,000 contribute $1,150. So yeah, again, thanks to the counties that have jumped in with us. If anyone here can help us out, like I said, we need 3 to 5 more people to really to hit our goal for the year. Please give me a call or send me an email if you have any questions, or if you can join us.
If you want to pop your information into the chat, Carl, that would be helpful for people that are on the call.
Yep, I will for sure.
Thanks. Yeah, another great way to get the information out to a target audience through that public service announcement. Any other multi-organization collaborations that people want to share? Dina.
I'll share. So it's kind of in the works right now, but through a roundabout way, Whitefish Chain saw some coasters we put out last year, and they really liked them and want to do more. So now we are working with, we're working at least with the Whitefish Chain right now, and actually the National Loon Foundation, and we're working on some dual messaging coasters. So I think the current plan, and we're still in the works, but we'll have like an AIS message on one side and a healthy lake message for the loons on the other side. Get the lead out as providing some imagery for the other side as well. So just kind of an interesting mixed message collaboration. So if anybody wants to get in on it, it's early. I don't know what we'll, where we'll go with it, but at the very least you can buy some of the coasters probably. So you can let me know that too.
Absolutely, yeah. I've heard some interest in those. I found mine at Portage Brewing. So
nice. Yeah, it's interesting how many people have like randomly seen them and contacted me. So we gave them out at a lot of the bars and restaurants. I also put them in bait bags with a bunch of coasters and one of our AIS towels, and we handed those out to a lot of the local resorts and just kind of did giveaways that way too. So I think they work out to be like 3 cents a coaster, which I feel like is one of the cheapest items you can put in front of somebody. So that's what we're working on.
Cool. Thanks, Dina. If you want to put your contact information in the chat, that'd be helpful.
Sure. Definitely.
Hi, Liz.
Hi. So I just wanted to share that similar to Holly's project, we had a smaller collaboration up in northern Minnesota between Cook County, Amanda and I, and St. Louis County as well, working with Wildlife Forever to come up with a non-motorized watercraft PSA. So that was just finalized a couple months ago, and I can put a link to that video in the chat as well. So please share that widely as well if you have folks that use non-motorized watercraft.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, I'm going to have to share all this information out with those that couldn't attend as well. So lots of great collaborations going on here. Any other multi-organization collaborations to share? Awesome. Okay. So what we'll do now is we're going to take a break, and then we'll come back and talk about just other public engagement efforts. We've got a few examples from Tony, Emily, and Doug, and then you're all welcome to, again, share the things that you are up to as far as public engagement. And I know a lot of the interest has been in kind of K through 12 education, as well as just general public engagement at events or products created and such. So we'll come back and chat about that. Let's see, let's go till 11:20. We'll take a 13-minute break. So I encourage everyone to stand up and move away from your screens, take a bio break and stretch, and come back refreshed at 11:20, and we'll talk more about public engagement efforts. Thanks, everyone. All right, so it's 11:21. I saw a lot of hand clapping and thumbs up and a few faces. So I think we're ready to kick things off for the remainder of our workshop. So we've got Tony, Emily, and Doug presenting on some public engagement efforts they've been up to, and then we're going to open the floor to everyone else. So go for it, Tony.
Well, thank you. And I'm actually excited about this one because this was a very fun project for me. I do have program guidelines, and I try to use our natural resource strategic goals. And we also have guidelines that we've gotten from our partners through surveys. And I like to use their words against them when they say, why are you doing this? And I say, because that's what everybody says I'm supposed to be doing. So I do try to use strategic plans more out of spite than anything, because I've been on them before and they seem to be something that just gets thrown on the shelf, and I like them to be used. So you can see this one hits, quite a few of our goals. So Wyzetta Sailing is a nonprofit. Matt Thompson, wonderful person there, does a lot of teaching of things other than sailing in his class throughout this summer with students. And they applied for a grant. So part of our money goes directly to access inspections. Part of it I get to directly decide where it goes. And half of it goes through a pass-through grant, which is basically saying, hey, partners, how do you want us to spend this? And they applied for a grant, and my review committee liked it. It was actually the #1 rated grant for that committee. And they tried to create a long-lasting art installation. It's on Lake Minnetonka. We created 5 unique sets, and we used local and diverse artists, underrepresented voices, Native voices. It was unveiled at the Wyzetta Art Festival, or Wyzetta Art Experience, they call it. It did get quite a bit of media interest, and it's a nice way of connecting private sailing communities into their impact. And incidentally, sailboats are the #1 violators as far as AIS compliance going into the Minneapolis chain of lakes. So we're trying to get them a little bit. And it was on WCCO News, KARE 11. I think you're going to see it on Minnesota Bound this summer. So just, when it went in the news, I got all these wonderful quotes from people that texted me, and I love to just put quotes up there because it's kind of fun. But everybody thought it was very unique and kind of just a neat way of spreading the word. And you can make aquatic invasive species fun. This is actually right there at the Wyzetta Sailing School. And in the back right there is actually one of the sails, and they do a little STEM class. And last year we hit about 850 kids. I think we're going to probably get about 1,500 this year, and these things will be good for at least 10 years. And so this just kind of shows you, I just love that kid's face. I said, try to look really smart. That's what he did. So so here's one of our artists. This is Amy. And this was her sail, and carp means a lot to her. She had a lot of little research in carp, and so her sail's on carp. This is Katie. This is one of the artists. This is like what they provided, like they wanted to draw. And I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? How consistent that is. And this ink is stinky. Oof, it's stinky stuff. So, but just, you can see flowering rush. And so she just picked basically all the stuff that's in Lake Minnetonka, and it's depicted up there. This is Josh. He's actually a guide, and you can kind of see, he kind of says, stop it from lake to lake up on the top here. You can see a boat going in, a storm sewer coming in here, zebra mussels, carp, milfoil, curly-leaf. He kind of put the kind of the idea of it, what stop it from going to lake to lake. Gino, fantastic guy, first generation from Nigeria, went to college for art, and this was his design and what he ended up putting up on the sails. And then Marlena, who I didn't know, but is a pretty big shot. This is her here. She's got a lot of little symbolism here. So you can see that this is clean water and a healthy fish. And you can see right in there are medicine wheels. And for her, that means, taking care of the water, and the role every individual has in preventing the spread of AIS is the part we play in the health of our world and around us. So this is what that means. On the jib up the front here, you can see it jagged, and it's zebra mussel colors, and you can see the dead fish. And so a nice little, a lot of symbolism in there, probably more than I even know. So what's nice about this is it gives you kind of the opportunity to do this quick little talk, and you have a commissioner there, right? And so you kind of can frame it for them. So we'll see if you can hear this.
And without the support of the leadership that I have in the county, right from my direct supervisor all the way up to our commissioners, they set the vision, they set the game plan, and we do this. And aquatic invasive species doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can be positive, and everybody has a role. It doesn't matter if you have an aquarium tank with a goldfish in it, if you're a lakeshore homeowner that wants to buy a used dock, if you are a boater that goes around one of our 50 lakes in Hennepin County, or if you have a sailing school. Matt does not have to teach aquatic invasive species. He teaches sailing, but he does it because him and their staff love our lakes. And it's just such a pleasure for me to have the opportunity to partner not only with them and their staff, but who I consider friends now, two beautiful artists that are showing us their vision of what aquatic invasive species means. So with that, I'm going to cut it off and introduce Commissioner Latondras, and he's going to talk about the program a little bit.
So it's kind of nice because, you know, you can kind of frame it for them a little bit in a nice little informal way of what we think, you know, when we think of invasive species in our program. And he went in and talked about our program and the grant. And so it was really fantastic. And you can, so then they gave free rides. And so all these people at the Wayzata Art Festival just piled down here, and they went out for a 5 to 10 minute sailboat ride on these sails. It was fantastic. And Amy was so nervous talking in front of the camera there. And I said, yay, just because she told me why carp are important to her, or, you know, talking about it. And I said, just talk like that. And she did a fantastic job right there with the camera in front of her. And we gave these people this wonderful opportunity. And I got to tell you, 2 of them didn't have cars. I had to bring them the sails and bring them back. And that wasn't part of this. So, you know, if you're going to do something like that, you know, you just realize you might have to go above and beyond and help them out a little bit. But it, you know, I came home just beaming. Just these people are so happy and so wonderful. And they did this art, and we just gave them this opportunity. And I was thinking I should probably do more of this in my private life, just a little more volunteering, because you did feel really good after the end of this. So we'll just flip through a couple of pictures. You can kind of see what it looks like as people loaded in and out. And in fact, we actually took a couple of dogs out there. I think Minnesota Bound was on the boat at the same time dogs were going on, and so their poodles were out sailing around Lake Minnetonka. Kind of made me a little nervous on that one, but you could see how they look, and they're out there all summer, and you can't miss them, you know. And so and they take them racing, so they're going to Iowa, Wisconsin, out on the East Coast, all that type of stuff. And this year, coming up soon, is we're going to have, basically we're growing on this success, and we're reusing the leftover ink, which is wonderful. And we're going to do a smaller set. So we're going to do a set of 5, and it's going to be more specific. These are going to be little kid sails like you're seeing here. And they're going to be a little more specific messaging, like one will be about clean, one will be about drain, one will be about dry, one will be a dispose, and then one's just going to be a fun one, like a pirate or something like that, and have some type of AIS theme to it. And so we'll have 15 of these little ones after this year, and I'll right out there in Wayzata Bay. And they use it with their junior program, and they estimate they got about 1,500 students per year just that do that, plus all the other places that they take the other ones. So I kind of view this as these will be like the very clear messaging, and those ones that we just made last year are kind of the high, think deep, you know, type of messaging. And how did that get in there, Tina? I have no idea. But if you have any questions, that's me and my little pup doing agility. I have no idea how that got in there. Anyway, that's my presentation. So any questions? I'm open.
Thanks, Tony. Any questions for Tony? All right.
I just had a question. So the funding part of it, how did you fund it? I missed that. If you said it, I didn't hear that. But
this is from state. Yeah, this is directly from state AIS funding. It's an educational outreach program.
So. But what portion did you fund? So did you fund the sailboats or just the art part of it, or
right.
What part did you fund?
Okay, so no, we didn't buy the sailboat. We did buy the sails so that they're going to be around for 10 plus years because they're new sails and they take good care of them, and this ink isn't going to fade. And we bought the ink, and we paid each artist $2,000 for their work, and that was what we did. So, and then Wyzetta Sailing, we didn't. They all their time and effort and providing space to do this was their partnership. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. No, I'm
Thanks, Tony.
not buying people's sailboats. Don't worry about it.
Good to know. What a unique way to reach out with this message. That's fabulous, Tony. Thank you. All right, Emily, are you ready to present on your work?
I think so. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I wanted to present our AIS mobile display. So in 2020 into 2021, we worked with a company, Tahura Communications, to create this display. Kind of the goals were to influence some behavior change and to be able to take it to different places. So I thought the best way to showcase this display would be to put it up so it's behind me and just show you the individual elements. So the first thing is these back panels. It's a little glary, but there's one that shows a healthy lake with kind of a diverse native populations. And then the one over here shows sort of like an infested lake where it looks like milfoil's taken off and there's carp and kind of, we have one native fish, it's a bluegill, that kind of looks a little bit like sad and sickly, that it's not quite thriving the way it should. So, you know, that's kind of the big backdrop is this activity where can you spot the difference? So that's kind of cool. Along with that, there were basically 4 additional interactive components of the display. So the first is a chalkboard that kind of gets the mind working to look for aquatic invasive species. So if you look, there's little like starry stonewort that you would, you know, circle with the chalkboard marker. And there's a whole bunch of them for them to find. So you see the milfoil, and it kind of just gets your idea of like, oh, these are all the places that I should be looking when I'm cleaning my boat. So that's kind of cool. The other thing, I have it over here. We have made these like origami, and we kind of focused on just like having one native species as, you know, these are something you want to protect. So we have this little bluegill, and it tells folks to go to the Dakota County website and look for AIS. So that's a cool little activity to fold these origami fish while learning about aquatic invasive species. And that's kind of cool because it's an activity that takes a little bit of time, so you can have a conversation with a family as they're standing there. It was really great at our county fair last year. And then we have these individual, they kind of look like cutting boards. We call them handhelds, showcasing different aquatic invasive species to give more of that so what. So a lot of people are like, yeah, I get it, clean, drain, dry, but why? So these kind of go into this, the why, you know, like zebra mussels can breed and spread quickly, blah, blah, blah. Each one has a different thing. So we focused on starry stonewort, milfoil, zebra mussels, and then spiny water flea. And then our very last one is, I think, kind of the coolest. Let's see if I can bring my whole setup here. But it's a disappearing maze. So in this, you're kind of thinking in the mind of an invasive species. So we picked a spiny water flea because they can hitch rides on things like equipment, nets, and etc. So each one of these little circles turns, revealing a pathway from a lake to another lake. And as someone goes through the maze, they run into different obstacles. which they're listed out here on the side. So things like emptying bait buckets, leaving gear out to dry. So if your goal is to be the bad guy and get from one spot to another, here are all the things that are in your way. So it's kind of just a different way of thinking about AIS in terms of like how they move. So those are the main components, and we've had really good positive feedback on our mobile AIS display. Like I said, it's really cool because it condenses down pretty small. You can fit it in the trunk of a car. We brought it to our county fair, and it's been lent out to some cities since then. So yeah, we're really pleased with it and thought it was kind of a really cool project worth sharing. And I am willing to take any questions on it.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. What an engaging way to engage people about AIS. Any questions for Emily? I guess one question, if people wanted to duplicate your efforts, would they contact you or the business you worked with or both or?
Yeah, so they can email me. I'd be happy to share any of the, we have PDFs and stuff from the creation of all of these. We hired Tahura to do kind of this, high level, like create it, but everything is set up that they gave us to be able to be fabricated. So we were kind of in charge of having the things printed and things like that. So I'd be happy to share the raw files with anybody who's interested in having this stuff. I think most of it's Dakota County branded. So if you want it for your county, you may want to switch that, but would be happy to share any of it.
Excellent.
Oh, by email. Yeah, I'll put that in the chat.
Okay, thanks. And there was one question about how much did it cost?
So when it was all said and done, was a little over $10,000. So.
Any other questions for Emily? All right. Well, thanks for sharing, Emily.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. And then let's see, we got Doug next, and I'm going to share his slides for him. Teams doesn't like his connection for some reason.
Teams never likes my connections. Sorry, my camera is not working. There we go. Thank you, Tina.
You're welcome.
Well, thanks everybody. Again, I'm Doug Jensen. I'm with the University of Minnesota Sea Grant Program located in Duluth. Thanks for being here and thanks for the opportunity to present at this workshop. Yeah, we've got something, a process to share and a product to share, and so we're pretty jazzed about it up here in northeastern Minnesota. I'd first like to thank Liz Anderson and Lake County AIS program for funding this project, and also like to thank Addie Johnson, our undergraduate student intern, who has been a rock star working on this project. And also like to thank the Boundary Waters Coalition, which is a multi-agency group in northeastern Minnesota, led by Jeff Forrester, who's working with community leaders, lake associations, advocacy groups, and users to help protect the spread of AIS into the Boundary Waters. So a little bit of background: for nearly 3 decades, Minnesota Sea Grant, Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and many others have advocated for the use of science at public waters and at trailhead accesses as tools to protect our waters. And signage use is justified and is recommended because many surveys by Minnesota Sea Grant and others continue to show that signs are the top source, absolutely top source for information for recreationalists who use Minnesota waterways. And the BWCA is one of the least invaded areas in Minnesota, and certainly we want to try to keep it that way. So in collaboration with the BWCA Coalition, Minnesota Sea Grant prioritizes the creation of new AIS signage with the watershed protection message. And by conducting a national appeal for examples of signs and posters from across the nation with similar messages through a network of regional AIS task forces, we were able to take those messages most appropriate from the submitted signage. The BWCA Coalition served as an advisory committee to help adapt or adopt the messages for the new signage, and prototype signage was reviewed by 3 focus groups virtually, consisting of community leaders, lake associations, advocacy groups, resident boaters, and BWCA users from the Ely area. So prototypes were considered by the BWCA Coalition for final review, which just happened yesterday, and we'll show you that sign here in a moment. And now that the sign has been chosen, we'll collaborate with Wildlife Forever to design and produce new signs through a grant that they had secured through U.S. Department of Agriculture and also along with funding from Lake County. Installations of the signs were chosen using a risk-based prioritization process, and we're planning to have the signs installed in late April and early May to help protect headwater areas from the BWCA. We used a science-based approach, which worked very well and should be considered as a model for the development of AIS and other science. And so our purpose is to protect the many headwater areas leading into the boundary waters, also in the Quetico. Again, the BWCA has few infestations, but there are many AIS and border waters or are nearby. Recreational watercraft, mainly canoes and kayaks, pose the greatest risk for spread within the BWCA. And this project really builds off of 5 surveys that are identified here that show that signs at water accesses are the top source for information. If anybody is looking for those references, please let me know. And the project also builds upon 2 multi-agency efforts that ensure that AIS signs are present with appropriate messages at public water accesses on BWCA border waters and trailheads. And so the coalition really wanted the signs to be co-branded to build upon the successes of the Stop Aquatic Hitchhikers campaign's positive influence on behavior from over the past 20 years. So we approached the sign effort as beyond just posting an informational sign. We really desired it to be reinforcing the motivations for actions reflective of the desire to protect the boundary waters, personal responsibility, and last but not least, based on a community-based social marketing prompt. Next slide, please.
Yep.
So as co-chair of the ANS task force, outreach subcommittee, I reached out to the 6 regional panels to solicit the best of the AIS signs and posters. And through that effort, we received 52 signs and 39 posters for a total of 91 items. That's just reflective of how, again, how important it is to have signs and posters that are out there. A lot of people are using them. Addie and I reviewed the elements and messages that lent themselves to the boundary waters, including watershed messages, and then Addie created 6 sign prototypes. Then we convened the advisory committee to review them. And then we held 3 focus groups composed of Ely area community leaders. And using a science-based approach hybrid model, we used both a qualitative and a quantitative approach. They provided us with written comments, which was the qualitative assessment piece, and then also with numerical rankings. And then I conducted a non-parametric analysis called the Friedman Rank Choice Analysis. And based on that analysis, we were then able to choose which sign was their favorite. As it turns out, we came out in a tie, a virtual tie. And so we reconvened the advisory committee to report on the process and also to choose one of the 2 signs, which again, we just met yesterday. So this is hot off the press. So go ahead and go to the next slide there, Tina.
Yep.
So here's the new proposed sign in the upper right. Quickly going over the sign's elements. The new sign prime message is protect our boundary waters wilderness, or boundary waters ours to protect, sorry. The key action message is before entry and at every portage. The sign reflects adoption of the Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force recreational activity guidelines based on Stop Aquatic Hitchhikers and also Lake County AIS messages to clean, drain, dispose, and dry. There was total consensus by the focus groups and the advisory committee in terms of the thank you message. And the assessment uses a 3-staged approach based on high risk. So those criteria that we looked at for placement of the signs, which are shown there on the map, is on or near AIS infestations, protection of headwater areas, popularity of the accesses, and also those accesses that are lacking signs. And so we think that this process really serves as a pretty straightforward science-based model for the development of not only aquatic invasive species signage, but other outreach tools to make our outreach efforts even more effective than they can be. So With that, hopefully you had a chance to take a look at the map and also the sign. But that's where we're hoping to put up about 123 signs installed across the Boundary Waters region in 2 different phases. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Doug? All right. Well, Doug, I was on the committee, so a bit biased, but I do like how you, the process you went through to come to the content and design of this project. So it'll be interesting to see if is there any follow-up analysis being done, do you know, or planned for, seeing if paddlers relate to this sign once they've been posted?
Well, we kind of did that on the front end.
Okay.
So through our focus groups, we had community leaders, business owners in the Ely area, lake associations. We also had advocacy groups, and we actually had users evaluate the sign. So hopefully we've gotten sufficient input that will help make them effective on the front end. But no, there's no plans for any follow-up assessment, and whether or not they relate to that, that'd have to be a separate project. Yeah, and thank you for your kind words and also for serving on the advisory committee. Appreciate it.
I'm a sucker for signs, so.
So am I. I've been promoting signs since we did our very first survey back in 1994, and it showed that signs were the #1 source. It's probably why so many states are using them.
Probably. Thank you so much, Doug.
Yeah, thank you.
And I put Doug's email in the chat too, if you want to get in contact with him about that project.
Thanks, Tina.
All right, we've got 12 more minutes of our workshop left today, and I want to have time for others to share their public engagement efforts. So right now, if you want to pop your cameras on so we can see some faces, that would also be lovely if you're able and willing to do that. And then also feel free, why don't we use the raise hand feature, or raise your hand in your video if you want to share something, some public engagement efforts.
Tina, I'll just mention that I did put a couple of resources in the chat. The attack pack, a link to the attack pack, and also the Adopt a Habitattitude curriculum.
Yes, thank you, Doug. All right, Russ, go for it.
I'm gonna turn my camera on here. All right. You guys see this thing I have over here?
Yes.
Sort of. Tilt the camera. We had this built a few years ago, and it squeaks. It's made out of plywood and 2x4s, and it's just a rotating cube, and it has little flaps and stuff that are interactive, so kids can kind of look at it, and it kind of tells it's basically primarily based in Kennewick County, but it has all the clean, drain, dry stuff, and that's kind of what we have for now. The other thing I'd like to do this year is I got a couple of tool stations I'm building. I'm going to put it accesses, and I'm going to incorporate a QR code on those that takes them right to our website, where we'll have decontamination unit hours, and hopefully just kind of like a very basic check-in, check-out type system. Just the very basic steps people can take to clean their boats and make sure they're doing what they need to do to prevent the spread. So that might not happen this year, but that's the plan anyway, to try to incorporate other locations into the decon unit and bring everything together.
That's great, Russ. You should make sure to connect with Justin Townsend with Ramsey County if you haven't already. He has been piloting a check-in, check-out system for his
Yep,
public
I've
water
done that.
accesses. Okay, good. Russ, one question on your display there. Who made that? Was that made in-house or did you get it produced through a company?
I think the stand and the cube itself were made, I think, by our maintenance department. And then it was originally, the previous coordinator had a wrap done for it at a company in Buffalo, and I just had a local company redo the wrap when I took over.
Thanks, Russ.
Oh.
Other public engagement efforts. I know you're all doing a ton of work, so don't be shy. Yeah, Jacob.
I'm going to try to share my content here and see if it works today. Can anyone see that?
Yep.
So in-house, we built some tool outpost stations, just put some really handy tools on it for our lake users. And we built them all in-house. We have 6 of these mobile ones. We just kind of put sandbags under, and we also have 2 permanent ones that we have fixed. Built those ones a little bit beefier and have a kind of a little canopy over the top of those. And so we just did everything in-house to kind of save on costs, and did it during the pandemic. So it was a good project for our staff to come together and do some stuff and, you know, not get too close or whatever. So, but yeah, the ones we have fixed to permanent sites on DNR access sites, obviously we had to work through DNR parks and trails and pull permits and do that. But these mobile ones, they're not too concerned about our mobile ones as long as they're by the signs, by something on the access site where it's not out of the way of the lake users. So
About how much did it cost for one of the mobile ones?
I figured it, even with the tools, it was under $100. So
wow.
It was before lumber prices skyrocketed, so I got all the materials at a good cost. But I would peg it'd be under $200 for, you know, each sign. Obviously, we did a dimension that we could take plywood that was graded for sign building and cut that into 3. So dimensionally, we tried to plan it from the onset that we were getting more out of just buying a piece of plywood, and the back side of these just has standard plywood, so save some costs that way.
And did you see any issues with tools being stolen or vandalism? I know that's a common question with tool stations.
We've had a few tools run off, but not as much as we thought and anticipated. We've looked into doing the retractable dog leash cords on them, and you know, we strayed away from them because you have to go around your boat. We just wanted it to be really easy, user friendly. Every tool on that outpost was purchased at a local hardware store that is under $20. So it's under $20 to replace a tool. I have my AIS inspectors checking if we're missing a tool. They have, you know, in their trunk, they have a spare on hand. So.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Jacob.
Yep. And also really handy for river access sites that get flooded every year. So.
Good tip. Tony, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead.
This is an older one. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
This is something Minneapolis Park District did. Actually, 2015 is when we did this one. But they did a little bike and trailer, and then actually the conservation officers out there, they put their dog in it at one point. But one of the things that they were thinking, here's actually some of the kids looking for their stickers on there, and where they look for the invasive species and stuff, was, you know, kind of creating a fleet of these, and you could do different things like AIS busters off of the Ghostbusters, or, you know, something like that, or, you know, there could be different themes there, and they can go down parades and stuff like that. So it gets about 10 times more audience than a handout, is what Minneapolis told me, which is kind of what we think about when we think about hands-on stuff. It does seem to get a little more attention.
Absolutely, it does.
So yeah, they built that in 2015, still use it. Incidentally, they wanted to take a muscle car and turn it into a zebra muscle car, and they wanted me to buy him a car. So, but I said, I'm not buying you a car.
So you don't buy cars or sailboats?
That was one of their ideas.
What a restrictive program.
But I thought that was clever. A muscle car into zebra muscles, and they drive it around Minneapolis.
Excellent. Anyone want to share one last public engagement effort?
Tony, you'll find this funny, but in the middle 1990s, there was actually a real muscle car that was pulled out of Lake Erie that was covered with zebra mussels.
Sounds like a missed opportunity.
Mm. All right. Well, I know we could probably just go on for days about all the different innovative things that people are doing for public engagement. So please do continue to share those with each other and with me, or if you're thinking of developing things, reach out to your neighbors and your peers, and DNR staff. We're all here and happy to help and brainstorm ideas. And also, you know, just doing a little bit of evaluation too is really helpful to see if the efforts that you're doing are making a difference in awareness, in behavior change. You know, any little measurement goes a long way in, you know, justifying the programs and getting support. So any ways that you can do a little bit of evaluation on top of your public engagement efforts, I really do encourage people to do that. And if you need ideas for evaluation, I'm happy to, you know, discuss those with you as well. So with that, I think we'll end it 2 minutes early and say thank you very much for everyone's participation. Can't even list all the presenters and all the sharers, because it was a great participation here today. So stay connected and stay in touch, and come to our last online workshop March 17th at 1 p.m. to talk about early detection and organisms in trade. So thank you, everyone, and have a lovely afternoon.